Back again with another top 5. And yes, that is my lazy dog going to be helping out with our list. He's not really going to be helping out, but he is going to be right there. So you'll probably see random feet and maybe hear some snoring. So be warned. So today we are going to be talking about top 5 summer movies. You know, we are in the summertime season, although it's been kind of rainy up here, but it got me thinking about movies that I grew up really loving during the summer. So decided to make this list to try and help really narrow down what my favorite are. So I'm going to be doing my top 5. This isn't necessarily going to be in specific order, but it's going to be pretty close. And I'm going to have a couple of exclusions that I'm going to talk about here shortly, just for some variety's sake. But really what we're looking at here, for my definition of this, is basically I'm trying to get a movie that takes place during the summer and that came out during the summer, or that I definitely remember seeing during the summer and or watching a lot, or just having some associations with the summer. So there's going to be a little ambiguity as far as if you're making your own list, it might look a little different, but that's the point of art. It's all very subjective. So for me, this is going to be my top 5 summer movie list. Now, before we get started with that, I did say there were going to be a couple of honorable mentions, and I'm really just going to not reutilize some movies that I've used on some other lists just because I want some more variety in there. So movies that I used on my 4th of July list could easily be on this one. Like Silver Bullet would probably be on there for me. Independence Day, I mean, it's really hard to not have that one on a summer movie list. But the number one that really would be number one on this list also for me, just because, I mean, honestly, it's probably like my number one movie of all time, is actually Jaws. And it's absolutely a summer movie. I mean, it takes place during the summer of 75, or that's when it came out anyway. But Jaws would be number one, most likely on this list, because it's just a freaking fantastic movie. But since it's been the number one movie on my last 2 lists, we're going to go ahead and just not use that one today so we can get a little more variety in there and get some more discussion going about these different types of movies. So moving into number 5, this one's going to be a little obscure for some folks, but for me, I absolutely loved it, and that is the 1987 classic Ernest Goes to Camp. Now, if you grew up in the South, you probably knew Jim Varney from different commercials, as he had this whole line of Hey Vern commercials that were kind of local and got a little bit bigger, and we started getting some more movies. And the first one, and why this one's on the list, is this is one of the first movies that I really remember watching and really makes me think of summer, because it is a camp movie, like a summer camp movie. Which it also dawned on me that that could be basically the entire list of summer camp movies, which maybe we'll have to do that list at some point. But I'm going to try not to use a lot of those, just to, again, keep a little more diversity in the list. But as well, this one was so important to me for so many reasons. I just absolutely loved Ernest. I mean, he's a little slapstick humor if you've never seen him before. I mean, it's literally it's kind of a sad story if you really look at it, but there's a camp that's on some old Indian ground. I believe it was supposed to take place in Tennessee. I'm pretty sure that's where the actual campground is. Camp Kikiki. But basically you have the facilities, repairman, janitor, low man on the totem pole, Ernest, who's got the heart of gold. You know, he's always trying to help people. He always gets taken advantage of a good bit as well. But his overall goal is to become a camp counselor. And basically that opportunity arises because no other counselors want to take on the delinquents that are getting sent to camp from juvenile hall. And basically it's kind of a coming of age story of them figuring out how to be in society and work with people. And the same thing with him. And it's a very sweet story that has a lot of layers to it. It's giving you a lot of different messages, but it's not beating you over the head with it, so I really enjoyed that one. Plus, you've got some killer songs in there. I mean, Ernest sings one song. You also have John Matusak's in there as one of the villains. I mean, you've got paratrooper turtles that are coming after you. It's got a little bit of everything, and I really, really just love the movie. Again, I know probably won't be on the list for a lot of folks, but if you grew up in my era and in my area, it might be. The next one on my list, number 4, we're actually going to be jumping ahead a little bit in time, and this is the 1995 classic Friday. Yep, this is Chris Tucker and Ice Cube in Friday, and I don't know what to tell you except for I watched this one when it first came out. I remember vacationing in Tennessee, visiting family, and we'd rent a lot of videos at the video store, and when we checked this one out, me and my brother, we would watch this one on repeat.
How the hell you gonna get fired on your day off?
And that didn't change for a long while, all the way into high school. I mean, I think I watched this when it first came out, so I'd been like a preteen. And I don't know what it was about the movie. It was something that it was just such a simple movie. If you haven't seen it, basically it's a day in the life of Ice Cube's character in Compton as he wakes up from being fired from his job on his day off for stealing boxes for a treehouse. If you've seen the movie, you know what I'm talking about. But he gets involved with his best friend, Chris Tucker, who sells a little weed and gets in deep with the drug dealer, and they're going to threaten to kill him. And there's just some wackiness that ensues. But It's such a simple story, but after thinking about it I really liked the humor. It was very, very kind of dry. It wasn't over the top, but it was also very realistic humor. And the fact that the families just felt like real people. Like, again, I'm not from Compton, so I'm not exactly sure what it was like there, but it felt like a very accurate representation of about going through a day-to-day life and what crazy situations might pop up. So I absolutely loved this one, and I watched it on repeat more than I really probably should have. Also got to give a shout out to Tiny Zeus Lester. Debo was one of the best villains in cinema, and I will stand by that.
What bite? The one I let you use a couple of weeks ago. Oh, that bite.
Moving on to number 3, and this is actually just a little bit ahead in the future. This is 1996, and this actually is a classic, Twister. Yes, Bill Paxton, Helen Hunt. I mean, you got quite the cast of characters, and this is a movie about, well, basically twisters. So this is about storm chasers this was really my first exposure to any of that stuff. So I know they ended up having some TV shows about it down the line, but basically it was a group of researchers that were chasing down storms to try and help create more efficient alert systems down the line based off of some stuff that happened in their past. And it's really the dynamic of all of the different actors in this one. There's so many good characters. The story itself is really kind of sweet, also a little sad. I mean, you have Bill Paxton that basically is trying to move on in his life and get something a little more established and become a weatherman, and he's basically getting divorced from Helen Hunt's character and marrying a new one who's a psychologist who he takes with her to go get the paperwork signed, and then they get sucked up, you see what I did there in a Twister. The movie's fantastic, though. I remember special effects were awesome. This was a big spectacle summer movie, and going to see it was awesome. It did really terrify me of tornadoes for a long while after that. Actually, still to this day, now that I think about it. And you actually had Carrie Elves of Princess Bride fame as the villain, more or less, in this one. And again, it was the writing was really smart. It seemed like realistic banter. All the characters were more or less likable, even the ones that you weren't meant to like. Like, when things happened to them, you didn't really want that to happen. It was just a good movie. And I've seen it so many times, but it really just kind of embodies the summer, you know? It's like a fun spectacle movie to go see while you're chomping on popcorn or whatever it may be. Twister was a fantastic movie and still holds up. Now we're getting down to the nitty-gritty, and this was really kind of tough. I've got 2 on my top that they could really go either way, but I think this order is going to stand pretty true and stand the test of time. Number 2 is one of my favorite movies, and that is the 1988 classic, The Great Outdoors. Yes, if you've seen this one, John Candy, Dan Aykroyd, it is fantastic. You basically just have a typical, I believe they were from Chicago, so Midwestern family trying to go vacation up in the woods. Chet Ripley, John Candy's character, is trying to relive some of the things that he did with his dad up in this cabin with his 2 sons and trying to pass on some knowledge and just experiences like that. You know, it's the typical family vacation, and it's really important to him. They rent a cabin in a very remote wooded area, and, you know, all kind of things happen with that. But then all of a sudden, his stepbrother shows up, none other than Dan Aykroyd or Roman in this movie, and he's basically just a piece of garbage, and it's just awesome. There's so many cool things that happen with this. Again, this is more of a coming-of-age movie for the older son, and then for actually all the parents and getting along, and they come to some different realizations. There's a lot of action that's kind of funny action that goes in there. There is a bald-headed killer bear that is in this one. There's so many cool things about this. There's a bat fight scene. There's a old 96er steak challenge. I mean, there's John Candy water skiing on one ski. Probably wasn't him, but still looked really cool. There's just so many fun things about this movie. It's one of the better family movies out there. I just remember watching this one growing up, and my whole family loved it, and then every time I watched it, I just absolutely still feel so nostalgic and still love it. So for that, Great Outdoors is number 2. Now we come to number 1, and this took a lot of thinking, but really it didn't. Because when it came back down to it, I was like, okay, well, what, you know, some summer movies, some things that happened in the summer, ones that I watched during the summer, kind of like we talked about. And the number 1 really has to be the 1987 classic, The Lost Boys. That's right. If you had any doubt that The Lost Boys was going to be on one of my lists, you really shouldn't have, because it's one of my favorite movies of all time. I mean, let alone the music is just so awesome, but the actors that you have in this one, you got both the Coreys, Feldman and Haim, you got Jason Patric, you got a very, very young, well, I mean, I guess they're all kind of young, but Kiefer Sutherland is in this one. It's just so cool. I mean, you have a family that's having a rough time, of the mom that recently divorced, taking her 2 sons to go live with her dad in Santa Clara, California, which I'm pretty sure is a made-up place, But basically, it's the murder capital of the world. You got a bunch of eclectic people there, weird people. There's boardwalks. I mean, it just looks like the coolest place, especially in retrospect, 'cause the music was awesome. You know which music scene I'm talking about, with the saxophone and chainmail and gigantic muscular dude. Oh, yeah. Yeah. If you've watched any of my gunship videos, also the music video reactions that have come out, he's back in those too. There's just so many cool things, and it's literally, and it actually really took me a long time to realize that it was called The Lost Boys, because it was supposed to be kind of like Peter Pan's Lost Boys, where they were a family of boys that never grew up because they were vampires. I've watched a lot of the behind-the-scenes stuff about this one, so I know that they did end up aging it up a bit to try and get a little more edgy with it, which worked out really well in my opinion. This was one that, again, in retrospect, it was kind of a lower budgety one where they did a lot of very creative camera work to not have to show a lot of the effects till more towards the end. And then you've got a lot of explosions, a lot of violence, a lot of sparkly blood, and it's just a really, really cool, fun movie. The soundtrack, the setting, the time that I watched it, how many times I've rewatched it. I mean, there's so many things that really cinch this in as the #1 summer movie for me, but I absolutely love The Lost Boys. There was a bunch of sequels that came after that. Not so much. But the original one, it's classic, and honestly, it might be... Oh, it's got to probably be in my top 10 movies, maybe all time. I'm working towards that list as well.
My own brother, a vampire. You wait till Mom finds out, buddy.
Probably need a vampire list coming up pretty soon, too. I'm going to go with that's my top 5 summer movies. Why don't you let me know which ones are yours? I know mine are kind of random and all over the place, especially generationally kind of all over the place, but I'm very interested to see what you guys' are, because let me have some good responses in the other videos that we've done, and it's always interesting to expand my thinking and be like, oh, crap, I completely forgot that one. You guys were right. So let me know in the comments section, and we'll have some more coming up. Don't forget, like, share, subscribe. Go to that subscribe button if you would. That'd be fantastic. And as always, you're awesome. Peace out.